will destroy you for ruining my life. Your love story won't be complete, just as mine.
Once upon a time, there was a young woman named Grace who fell deeply in love with a man called Daniel. Daniel was the kind of man any woman would pray for: tall, gentle, hardworking, and full of dreams. He was an architect who spent his days designing beautiful houses, but what made him stand out the most was his heart. He listened, he cared, and he carried a kindness that drew people to him. Grace believed Daniel was the man God had sent to heal her broken heart. They met at a small cafe one evening, and from the first smile he gave her, she felt her whole world change. They talked for hours, laughed together, and soon they became inseparable. Grace thought their love was unshakable. But as life often proves, the brightest love sometimes hides the darkest shadows. One evening, after many months of happiness, Daniel looked into Grace's eyes and told her something strange. He said, "Grace, there is someone I've been helping. She's not normal. People call her mad." Grace was surprised. She couldn't understand why Daniel, a man with so many good things in his life, would involve himself with someone society had rejected. The girl's name was Lucy. She was known in the neighborhood as the Mad Girl. She wandered the streets with tangled hair, dirty clothes, and eyes that seemed lost in another world. Children mocked her, people avoided her, and many whispered that she was cursed. But Daniel saw something different. He spoke to her, fed her, and even bought her clothes. When Grace asked why, Daniel said, "Because when I look into her eyes, I see pain. Not madness. I see a soul that has been broken. And I cannot turn away." Grace admired his kindness at first. She thought it was just charity. But slowly, things began to change. Daniel started spending more time with Lucy. He would sit with her by the roadside, listening to her strange laughter, watching her dance in the rain, and holding her hand when people mocked her. Grace noticed that whenever she called him, he was either on his way to see Lucy or had just left her side. One day, Grace secretly followed him. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw Lucy resting her head on Daniel's shoulder, and Daniel holding her like she was someone precious. Grace couldn't believe what she was seeing: the man she loved, embracing a mad girl in public without shame. When she confronted him, Daniel said softly, "You don't understand, Grace. Lucy needs me. There is something about her that I cannot walk away from." Grace asked, "Are you falling in love with her?" Daniel said nothing. His silence was more painful than words. From that moment, Grace's world began to crumble. She tried to hold on to Daniel, but the harder she tried, the more he slipped away. He stopped making plans with her, stopped smiling the way he used to, and whenever they spoke, his words always circled back to Lucy. One rainy night, desperate for answers, Grace went to find Lucy. She saw her sitting under a broken shed, shivering, talking to herself. When Lucy noticed Grace, she smiled in a chilling way and said, "You must be Grace. Daniel talks about you." Grace froze. "He talks about me?" she asked. "Yes," Lucy whispered, "but he loves me more. You can never take him away." Those words pierced Grace's heart. How could a mad girl speak with such confidence? Before she could ask more, Lucy suddenly screamed, rolling on the ground, crying and laughing at the same time. People rushed over, calling her cursed, and Grace fled in fear, her heart pounding. That night, she couldn't sleep. Lucy's words echoed in her head, "He loves me more." As weeks passed, Daniel became almost unrecognizable. His eyes always seemed distant, as if he was living in another world. He began to tell Grace about Lucy's past, about secrets only she had whispered to him. "She's not really mad," he said one night. "Something terrible happened to her when she was a child. Grace, if you knew her story, you would understand why I can't leave her." Grace cried and asked, "But what about me? You promised to love me. Am I not enough for you?" Daniel touched her cheek gently and whispered, "You are enough, Grace. But Lucy, she needs me more than you do." Those words shattered her completely. One cold evening, Daniel invited Grace to his house. She hoped he wanted to reconcile, that maybe he had finally realized her worth. But when she stepped into his living room, her world collapsed. Lucy was there. Not on the street, not dirty, but dressed in clean clothes, sitting comfortably on Daniel's couch like she belonged there. Daniel said carefully, "Grace, I want you to accept her. She is part of my life now." Grace felt the ground slip beneath her. The man she loved had brought a mad girl into his home and given her a place in his heart where Grace once lived. Lucy looked at her and smiled with that same chilling smile. "I told you he loves me more." Tears blinded Grace as she ran out of the house into the cold night. Grace ran through the dark streets with her heart pounding. The rain was pouring heavily, but she didn't care. She couldn't believe what had just happened. The man she loved had chosen a mad girl over her. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. All she could hear in her head was Lucy's mocking voice, "I told you he loves me more." The following days were torture. Grace tried to stay away from Daniel, but she couldn't. She loved him too deeply. She would sit by her window at night, wondering what Lucy was doing inside his house, wondering if Daniel was holding her the same way he once held her. Days passed, and Daniel moved further and further away from Grace. He stopped answering her calls completely. Every time she saw him, Lucy was by his side. They laughed together, they walked together, and Daniel seemed happy in a way Grace could no longer give him. One morning, news spread through the town. People were gathered near the old church, whispering in fear. Grace pushed through the crowd and saw Daniel kneeling on the ground, holding Lucy in his arms. Lucy's body was limp, her eyes closed, her lips pale. She was dead. Daniel cried like a child, shaking her, calling her name, refusing to let go. Grace stood frozen, unable to move. For a moment, she thought she should feel relief, that the girl who stole her love was gone. She had never seen Daniel so broken. The people whispered, "The mad girl is dead. Maybe it is better this way." But Daniel screamed, "No. She was not mad. She was my life, my soul, my everything. Without her, I am nothing." From that day, Daniel was never the same. He stopped eating, stopped speaking, and spent his days wandering to the old church where Lucy had died. Some said he spoke to her ghost. Others said he had lost his mind completely. Grace watched helplessly as the man she loved slowly destroyed himself for the memory of a mad girl. In the end, he died quietly in his sleep, clutching a small scarf that once belonged to Lucy. And Grace, she was left with nothing but memories. Memories of a love she thought would last forever, but which was stolen by a girl the world called mad. The town mourned. People whispered, "This love story is cursed." First the mad girl, now Daniel too. They placed him in a coffin and prepared his burial. Grace was broken, her tears endless. She held his cold hands again and again, saying, "Don't leave me. Please come back to me, Daniel." The day of the burial came. The coffin was carried slowly, the choir singing hymns with trembling voices. At the graveyard, the pastor prayed, "From dust we came, to dust we shall return." The coffin was lowered halfway into the ground. Grace fell on her knees, screaming, "Wait. Let me see him one last time." But then, something happened. The coffin shook. At first, people thought it was the wind. But then it shook again, stronger. The grave diggers froze, staring in fear. Suddenly, a faint sound came from inside. A cough. Everyone gasped. Some shouted, "Witchcraft." Others cried. The coffin lid moved slightly and a pale hand pushed through. Grace rushed forward before anyone could stop her. With trembling fingers, she opened the coffin. Daniel's eyes blinked. His lips moved. And in a weak voice, he whispered, "Grace." Grace screamed, tears pouring down her face. "He's alive. He's alive." The crowd trembled, some falling to their knees. The pastor shouted, "This is the power of God." The grave refused to swallow him. Daniel sat up slowly, his body weak but alive. He looked around at the fearful crowd, then fixed his eyes on Grace. "I heard your voice crying for me. It pulled me back from the darkness." Grace held him tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. "Thank you, Jesus. My Daniel is back." The coffin was lifted out. The burial was stopped. Daniel had returned from the edge of death. At first, Life seemed to give them another chance. Grace took care of Daniel day and night until his strength returned. One evening, he held her hands and said, "Grace, you loved me even when I was between life and death. Let us begin again. Let us marry, let us start a family." Grace smiled through tears. "Yes, Daniel. Nothing will stop us this time." But far away, in the silence of the night, Lucy's spirit wept. Her last words had not been buried with her. "I swore to destroy their love story," her voice echoed in the wind. "And I will." From that day, strange things began to happen around Daniel and Grace. At night, Daniel would wake up sweating, hearing Lucy's voice whisper, "You will never be free." Grace grew weaker and weaker. She cried often, saying she felt someone watching her. Before morning, she was gone. Grace had died, just like Lucy. Daniel was shattered. He wept until his heart felt empty. He realized Lucy's vow had been fulfilled. She had destroyed their love. After Grace's burial, Daniel never married again. He lived quietly alone, carrying the memories of both women until old age. When he finally died, people said love, jealousy, and pain followed him all his life.